Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, Nintendo hears your pleas for a Switch successor and laughs. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I'm always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. We've got a good show for you today. We're going to be talking about the news from the week, including the announcement of a manga adaptation of Fire Emblem Engage. And then on Thursday, we are discussing orphaned games we'd like to see coming to the Switch. We'd like to see them come to the Switch. But Mark, in the meantime, how's it going?
It's going great. What
did I ask you? Did I ask you how it's going or how you are?
I think that's right. I think
there's no way to go back.
There's no way to go back. It's going great. My husband's been out of town the past few days, which means all of like the regular TV shows that we watch together have been on hold. So
No Amazing Race.
So I've been, I was kind of like scrambling for something that I could watch by myself, to make the house feel not lonely.
It's tough over the weekend when your partner is away.
But I settled on Survivor, which
we hung out like on Saturday for like a couple hours.
I'm not besmirching your
right.
companionship, but I settled on Survivor, which I had never really watched before.
What made you gravitate towards it in this instance?
So I know that my sister and her husband watch it and really like it, and so. But there's like 43 seasons.
There's a ton of seasons.
Survivor,
and Mike White is a contestant on one of them.
Mike White is also a contestant on The Amazing Race twice. I think
right.
He comes
That's
back
right.
with
his dad, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But so I tried to look up online to find what the best seasons were.
Yeah.
But I didn't. It seemed the consensus seemed to be like one of the All-Star seasons. It's like I'm not going to start there.
No.
That feels like I need to build a base of reference.
They may
first.
be the best seasons, but like you haven't earned it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I have to put in the work. But I've got to say,
it's like if a watch guide was like, Avengers Endgame is the best one.
Right.
That might be true, but also like you can't start with that.
Exactly. So I went down to like the fourth or fifth best one on a particular list.
Yeah.
It's Cook Islands, I think, and I've got to say, it is a really good.
You're having a good time.
I'm having a great time
watching Survivor.
Have you ever watched it?
No.
Okay.
I have a pretty strong aversion to most reality TV, and like I've gotten into like various competition shows here and there when they're like highly specialized, but for the most part, the reality TV that I have an appetite for is just British Baking Show, and I fully expect to turn it off halfway through or fall asleep halfway through.
I mean, that doesn't sound so bad.
No, it's a pleasant way to spend a Sunday afternoon. Mark, speaking of a pleasant way to spend a Sunday afternoon, how would you like to spend it not borrowing, but owning my copy of Sonic Forces? That's right, the very perfect, that's the first time I've described it that way, the perfect borrowing program for my copy of Sonic Forces is coming to an end, Mark. But if people want to keep my copy, to borrow it one last time forever, they can. All they gotta do is email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com and get your name on the list. If you get it, if you are selected, you will get my copy of Sonic Forces forever. I'll send it to you. You won't have to pay anything, and you won't be able to send it back to me.
That's right. They may also
great point
end up owning your copy of Untitled Goose Game that'll be in a Sonic Forces box.
That's right.
Just a couple other things. The last day to get your name on the list is January 31st. So you have one more week.
We are running out of time
to get your name on the list, and then we're going to randomly select 2 people.
Right.
And then one person will be sent Sonic Forces, one person will be sent Untitled Goose Game in the
and
Sonic
no, you
Forces
will
box.
not know which one in advance.
Right. But because it's just being sent away forever,
yes,
you can submit for any address in the world. It doesn't have to be domestic. It doesn't have to be the United States.
I mean, submit it for your address, right?
I mean, that feels like a rule.
You're right. You're right. If you want to send this thing to Fiji, you can send this thing to Fiji.
Buckingham Palace.
That's right. Care of the king. Yeah, that's all fine. Get all of your names to us by January 31st at midnight local time for you.
Sure, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, we're not going to be checking it.
No, definitely not. And then, yeah, we will announce where the permanent homes of those games are going to be on the next episode after that.
Did we say our email address?
Nintendo Cartridge Society
at gmail.com.
And I think we did. Mark, I love that we're not listening to ourselves or each other at all in this episode so far. All right, let's get into what we've been playing this week. Okay, I got to start off by saying that I had pre-ordered a copy of Fire Emblem Engage, the Divine Edition, through Target. It is still not in my possession. I still expect it to arrive on Wednesday of this week.
Oof.
I know. This has been painful, as other people in my life have obviously gotten their copies, either digitally or physically, and have started playing, which, Mark, I understand you have started playing Fire Emblem Engage.
That's right. Can I ask one thing real quick about your current situation?
Yes.
When you ordered it, like, did you know it told you it was going to come, like Saturday, right? Like it was like right around the release date?
Yeah, it had like an expected delivery date of I believe it was the 21st of Saturday. I did this, like I said, from Target. And as I've talked to people, I've gotten that like knowing like yeah, Target's not great about hitting like release dates for stuff. But this was like literally the only place I saw it, the pre-orders available for the Divine Edition. And I've had many times where I've been like, should I just buy this game from GameStop, play it, and then try to return an opened copy of the game? And like, it's a little bit of a gamble. They reserve the right to not give you a refund for an opened piece of media. So I haven't done it. I don't want to accidentally spend an additional $60 on this game, especially when I know I'm going to spend another $30 on the DLC. So yeah, I'm in like a limbo that I don't like.
Well, at least at this point, you're close.
I'm close, I think.
Right. Yeah. Has it shipped?
It says on the way, but I don't. It's not clear to me whether it's one of those like on the way to the place that ships it, or if it's on the way to, my post office, which will then be out for delivery.
Oh man,
or whatever.
that stinks. Well, hopefully, hoping for the best. But yeah, I did pick up Fire Emblem Engage, and I don't think I like it, but I'm not sure. It's still early. I've only played like a couple of hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And it is fine, but kind of like all the things I personally was worried about.
Yeah.
In going into Engage, again, as somebody who really liked Three Houses, but had not played a lot of Fire Emblem before, and in general, they're like pretty cool on strategy RPGs.
Yeah.
Or tactical RPGs. But either way, it is just not really moving me.
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad necessarily. So I think the presentation is really nice, but it is, and like a lot of the visuals in the game are very beautiful, but it's a very nice presentation of a story that so far I find very tedious and not particularly interesting.
Can you pinpoint what's like tedious or not particularly interesting about that story?
So much of it is like, and this is kind of the problem that I had with Persona 5, where it's just like, oh, it feels like I'm being told a story that is self-evident. So, there's like, and I'm sure that is not true. And I'm sure that there are like twists and this is all just set up. Again, I'm only a few hours in, but there's a point, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a point where like a character is giving a speech that I was carrying my Switch around doing other things because I was like, I get it. And this is still going.
Right.
Like, like this is just seemingly endless. It felt like 5 minutes. It maybe wasn't that long, but it really felt like it was just like, I cannot believe that this is still happening.
Right. It's just sort of like the standard like video game storytelling thing where it's like, in no other medium would this be happening this long.
Right, exactly. And it just made me, it really made me appreciate in Persona 5 Royal that you could like speed through
Yeah.
cutscenes and not skip them entirely, because I don't want to skip it entirely. Like I want to know what's going on, but
Right.
I am
Can you not
impatient.
speed up and like
I don't,
just go
not
line
that
by
I can
line?
tell. You can go line by line, but some of it, it's like cutscenes.
Yeah.
Where your only option is, you watch the whole thing at normal speed,
Or
you press
don't.
like,
Yeah.
exactly. And like, I'm not digging either option really. And then the other piece of it is that the combat is, so it's not like, it's different from Three Houses obviously, but like I turned off all of the animations and all that kind of stuff, so I never I'm just in the tactical view,
Yeah.
and so I see what's happened, like the kind of isometric map view, and the my troops move in and attack, and instead of cutting to kind of like this third person view with dynamic camera motion and like all the animations and the dialogue and everything, like I just skip all of that,
Yeah.
because it just feels like I'm this early in the game and I don't have a lot of patience for like
Not
a
a
lot
good
of the
sign.
pieces. It just
Not a
doesn't
good
feel like
sign.
One thing I will say that I was surprised by, and I think is kind of cool, is in my head, not knowing very much about this game before I bought it, that kind of like that, the thing in the game where you have other like emblems, or you have the characters from different Fire Emblem games
Yeah.
that are like with you, and you engage with them and you can use them in battle and all that kind of stuff. I was imagining, for whatever reason, that it was more like uh like you pulled them in and they showed up, but more like Personas, I guess, in like the Persona series,
Yeah.
where they actually have a lot more like interaction and dialogue with you, which makes me understand way more the appeal of the first DLC pack that's part of the season pass, where you get Dimitri, Claude, and Edelgard. Because
Yeah.
if they really are like companions that you can like form these like bonds with and relationships, and they have dialogue and like
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, like it's like, oh yeah, like I
'Cause
can
I
absolutely
like
see the
those
appeal
kids.
of that. Exactly.
They're good kids.
Yeah.
Do you think they're like the pre-time jump versions of themselves, or the post-time jump?
Oh, that's interesting. I would guess the pre-time jump version.
I feel like that's more iconic. Also, if you do post-time jump, you have to decide whether or not Dimitri's got the eye patch.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't in all the scenarios.
Right.
Is it in the Blue Lions scenario where he keeps his eye? The one that you did?
No, my actually I can't remember, because there is somebody in the Blue Lions timeline who like does get an eye patch,
Yeah.
but I think it was in the Blue Lions house.
Well, yeah,
So-
that's Dimitri's he's the
Oh,
leader
then
of the
yes,
Blue
it is.
Lions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe there is one scenario where he doesn't get the eye patch.
Oh,
Maybe it must be the Eagles,
The Black Eagles?
Black Eagles.
Yeah.
Because he definitely had it in my playthrough of the Golden Deer.
And I'm like very confident that he had it in the Blue Lions. But yeah, so like I would say that I'm like, not really enjoying it.
It took you a
it's
little bit to
fine.
get into Three Houses too, though, right?
To be completely honest, I don't remember.
That was 100 years ago. There's no way to check it either.
I'm that is probably true, and a lot of like the kind of like very anime writing and all that kind of stuff, like
Yeah.
was true of Three Houses for sure. But I think Three Houses had an earlier hook, like it had
Right.
the monastery and the classes and interacting with all the different characters and everything, and so this has like an element of that, but it just does not capture my imagination the same way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It for me, I don't know that it's for me.
Well, I don't need you to love it, but I need to try it. And it's infuriating to me that I have not been able to spend any time with it yet. So instead, Mark, what have I been doing? What have I been playing? I've been playing Tetris 99. I now have 505 tickets. That's it.
That seems good.
That's it.
That's a lot of tickets.
It's a lot of tickets. I need 999. I'm like halfway there. I have started now. So you get the tickets by doing two things in regular mode, one in marathon and one in CPU mode. And the versus CPU and the marathon I wouldn't normally mess around with, but I have to get these tickets. One decision that I made over the weekend is that I am no longer going to do just regular Tetris 99 to get the 2 tickets in the regular mode. I'm going to be playing in the Invictus mode. Now, Tetris 99 Invictus Battle is only available to people who have gotten the Tetris Maximus before, who have come in first. Maybe it's a couple times. I forget exactly what you need to do in order to compete at that level. But the competition is much harder, and it starts at a higher level, so pieces are falling faster.
Oh, got it.
This means that the games are quicker. And I achieve whatever little task inside it much faster that way. And it's more challenging. So I think it is making me a better Tetris player because I'm engaging on the Invictus level.
That's interesting. I guess it makes sense. Yeah, like you could complete those tasks faster.
Just because the whole game is faster. Yeah. And it's amazing how much it makes just a piece falling faster makes you think about what you're doing with it faster. And so the whole thing just happens. Even though when you're playing regular Tetris, you can drop the pieces at any time. Just knowing, feeling the urgency that the game is spitting out at you makes your brain do it faster.
Yeah, that's really cool. Man, what an elite.
That's right. I'm a Tetris 99 Invictus player. It's very cool. And then I'm still chipping my way through Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. Every time I'm like, all right, I'm going to focus on the story now. I get through part of the chapter, and then it's oh, some new missions have unlocked, and I'm like, I'm just jumping into those combat missions and just doing that straight up combat. I am now in the point of the game that is overlapping with the Cloud flashbacks that I know from Final Fantasy VII, but obviously playing them from Zach's point of view. So it's very cool to see what parts they're sort of skipping past because they know I know, or they assume that I know what's going on here. And it's still a killer game. I saw some footage of this game being played on a PlayStation 5, just on YouTube. And I had not expressed any complaints about the Switch performance before. And I still don't know that I have complaints, but I can see the difference.
Yeah.
I can see it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, the version I'm playing isn't as good as this version.
Yeah, that makes sense. But you can play it portably?
I can, and I do. I will frequently take it out of the dock and just play it on the couch. And sometimes that's because I turned the English voice acting back on because I was feeling engaged with the story enough that I was like, I just want to hear it. But the performances are embarrassing enough that I need it to be a me activity and not an activity in the whole house. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
So I'm working my way through that. I'm in the middle / near the end of chapter 8 of 10. Someday I will finish this game. If it's not before Wednesday, though, I don't know when it's going to be.
But still enjoying it.
Yeah, still enjoying it. Though the fact that I haven't finished it yet does feel like a red flag to me that I don't love it, but I do think it's very fun. All right, Mark, that's what we've been playing this week. Let's get into the new releases and what we might be playing next week.
So not a whole lot coming out this week. But one thing we can pull out from here is on Thursday, January 6th, Eiyuden Chronicles Rising.
Eiyuden Chronicle?
Is being released on Switch and other platforms in retail.
Right. So we bumped on this for a second because we were like, hold on. A is this game is out already? And B, I guess that was it. We were confused. Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. So this is a prequel game / stretch goal for the people who are developing Eiyuden Chronicle. What's the name of the full game?
Oh, I just 100 Heroes.
100 Heroes, which in itself is a spiritual successor to
the Suikoden series.
That's right. So the prequel game stretch goal from the Kickstarter did come out in May of last year.
Right.
And now it is coming out physically for all platforms this week on Thursday.
But then Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes,
right,
which is the main game that was being kickstarted, has not released yet and is supposed to release this year.
Right. And the Eiyuden Chronicle Rising has like something of a mixed reception. So we don't even know if this is like worthy of our attention, but we couldn't figure out what this was.
Yeah.
And just had to like break it down. It of course makes me think of the the Castlevania like that Igarashi made.
Yes.
And then there
Bloodstained?
Bloodstained, yes. And they're like Ritual of the Night, Curse
Sounds
of the
good.
Moon.
Yeah,
There was one of them that was like the 8-bit one that they even made a sequel to. Those I don't have any of the information, the specifics here. Other than like this seems like a weird like stretch goal that just like happens on these things sometimes, where they're like, oh yeah, we make like another game.
Yeah, and I don't know enough details about this one because for Bloodstained, the Curse of the Moon, like that one that was more like Castlevania 3 or Castlevania 3 style, that was made by Inti Creates.
That's right.
So like a completely separate development team. And I don't know what the deal was with this prequel here.
Well, and especially like what's especially weird to me about like the Bloodstain example is like Curse of the Moon and its sequel, pretty good reputations, more so I would say than like the main game, and that does not appear to be the case here.
Yes, yeah, but otherwise not a lot coming out this week that we particularly wanted to shout out. So maybe we just run through some of the list here and just pull out whatever tickles our fancy?
Sure. I'll say the name of a game and you tell me what you think it is.
Okay.
And then we won't know what it actually is because we're not going to look these up. Uphill on Thursday, January 26th, Uphill Rush Water Park Racing.
Okay.
Comes to Switch.
So, you know how I've never been to a water park that has one of these. I would love to, but you know how there's like water coasters that like shoot the
water coaster
at the bottom of the hill. You know, like there's a stream of water that kind of like pushes
launches
you up it. Yeah.
Is that
then,
real?
Yeah. And then, you know, like you go down the rest. So I'm gonna guess that Uphill Rush Water Park Racing is a game where you're at a water park and you are racing like down slides, so almost like a bobsled, but that all of the slides have some sort of like uphill push launch that like gets you started,
that like blasts you off.
Yep.
I'm gonna say that it's like it's a game where there is a water park at the top of the hill and you're engaging in a foot race to get up there so you can buy ice cream.
Oh, very good. And then I'll pull from Friday, January 27th, Atone Heart of the Elder Tree.
Okay, so I think Atone, Heart of the Elder Tree. There's a colon in here. Atone, colon, Heart of the Elder Tree. I'm going to say that that's about, that's like a lumberjack game.
Yeah, I totally believe it.
All right, Mark, that's what we might be playing next week. Let's close this segment.
Oh, wait. Actually,
what?
This one's actually kind of looks... Okay, Atone is a Norse mythology-inspired hand-drawn game that blends interactive storytelling and complex puzzles with a rhythm game combat system.
Oh, interesting. At first I was like, Atone, maybe that's a pun, so there's like tone, so there's a musical element. But you're saying that actually is true?
Yeah, that is actually true. And it has this kind of like actually pretty cool art style.
Oh yeah, it does look cool. All right, well maybe this game is great. Add it to your watch list, Mark. Let's close this segment out. Which brings us to a regular segment on our show. It is time for 433. In 1952, American composer John Cage wrote a piece called 433, where a performer or group of performers didn't play their instruments for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. For the purposes of this show, our instruments are talking about Nintendo. So, for the duration of one performance of 433, Mark and I'll talk about something not at all Nintendo related, thus fulfilling the contract of the piece. Mark, we have talked about the longest running sitcoms, the longest running Broadway shows. Now you are going to administer a list to me that is...
the top 10 films with the most weekends at number 1 in the North American box office.
Okay, all right. So I gotta start with my gut. I gotta take myself back to when I'm like 14 years old. Titanic.
Yes, Titanic is number 2 on the list.
Number 2.
At 15 weekends at number 1.
Okay.
And kind of to give you a hint, like Titanic is the most contemporary film on this list, which kind of speaks to the way that like release schedules used to work. Because now it's all front loaded. Week 1, it's
Yeah.
like blockbusters are on every screen everywhere, and then
Right.
it quickly peters off.
Right.
Whereas that
right,
was
right.
not the case, especially like most of these films on the list were in the 80s. And so the era of the blockbuster
Right.
was starting, but films would still release in like a handful of theaters and slowly grow and
Well,
just be there for a long
Right.
time.
And it's also before before VHS becomes totally commonplace and that you could actually watch these movies at home.
And before like megaplexes were a thing.
Right. So how many Spielberg movies are on the rest of this list?
Oh yeah, let's see.
I'm just going to go ahead and say E.T.
E.T.'s number 1.
1982, baby.
16 weeks.
Okay.
At number 1, E.T.
Great.
the Extraterrestrial.
Mm.
A full third of the year, E.T.
That's
was number 1.
insane.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Congratulations. Big ups to E.T.
Big ups to E.T.
Is Raiders on that list?
Raiders of the Lost Ark is not in the top 10.
Not in the top 10. Okay. All right.
No.
Is Return of the Jedi on there?
Return of the Jedi is also not in the top 10.
Okay. All right.
So the way the top 10 works, I'll just tell you, it's 16 weeks E.T., 15 Titanic, and then there's 2 at 14, 1 at 12, 1 at 11, 1 at 10, 2 at 9, 2 at 8, and 2 at 7. So there's like 13, but we'll just count that.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
list. Yeah.
Okay. And so I should be aiming for like some 80s hits right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have Titanic in the 90s, and then everything else
In the 90s.
you could sail the 7 seas
In the 90s.
Precious time, Patrick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, everything else is in the 80s on this list. Yeah. Oh no. There's one from 1990.
Okay. From the year 1990. Is it like Goodfellas?
No, it's not.
Oh, is it Ghost?
It's not.
Is it to start with a G?
No.
Oh, okay, then I'll stop guessing that.
It starts with an H.
With an H.
I
don't know what this one
Home
is.
Alone.
Home Alone.
12 weeks.
Why did it stay at number 1 for so long?
People.
It's a holiday movie.
Hey, it was
I know,
1990, man.
You're right. It was like that explains it. All right. So other like 80s blockbusters. Is Ghostbusters on this list?
Ghostbusters is 10 weeks, number 7.
All right, great. All right. Other 80s movies that would be on this list.
Some of these are hilarious.
Are they like still in like that blockbuster mold?
No. Some of these are like Crocodile Dundee is
Oh
number
my gosh.
8 at 9 weeks. 9 weekends.
All right. Okay. So I should be thinking more like that. Is what you're
Exactly.
saying.
Like some of these are not, like blockbusters in the traditional sense. They're kind of just like middle of the road, like films that just had staying power at the box office.
So is something is there like a Bill Murray 80s comedy in here?
There is not
Like Stripes or okay.
Nope.
Okay. Or the one where they're golfing that everyone loves.
No.
What's the name of that movie?
Caddyshack. There is a Eddie Murphy comedy at the top of this list from 1984.
Ooh, Beverly Hills Cop.
Yes, number 3 at 14
Wow.
weeks. And number 1.
Wow.
And then a Dustin Hoffman also at 14 weeks.
A Dustin Hoffman Rain Man?
Nope.
Okay.
More of a comedy. They've turned this into a Broadway musical.
Okay. I'm so confused.
Tootsie.
It's Tootsie.
Yeah, Tootsie. 14
it's
weeks.
Tootsie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird that I've just got like a block in my mind where Tootsie used to be.
I can't believe you haven't guessed Porky's at number 8.
No way.
Yeah, I'm serious. Or no, sorry. Number 11 at 8 weeks. Shares that with Fatal Attraction.
Where? How far down the list do we have to go to get to like the Blair Witch Project?
Blair Witch Project is not on this list.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I understand that's not 1980s. I was doing a little bit of a swerve out of there, but
Yeah, but no, not. So the list goes to 4 weeks, and not. There are a lot of films at 4 weeks.
yeah, I guess that makes sense. Even 4 weeks is a long time to be at number 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
A full month.
Yeah. Well, what obvious ones? We're running out of time here. What obvious ones?
I don't think there's any obvious ones on here. So
Okay.
you have E.T. at number 1, Titanic at 2,
Right.
and then that's kind of where I think the obvious ends.
But I said Beverly Hills Cop.
You did. You got
Okay.
that number 3. Tootsie's number 4.
Very little prompting.
14 weeks. Home Alone is number 5 at 12.
Right.
Back to the
Back to the Future.
11 weeks. Ghostbusters 10 weeks. Crocodile Dundee and Good Morning Vietnam 9 weeks.
Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many comedies are on this list, isn't it?
Fatal. I've never seen Good Morning Vietnam. Is it a comedy?
Oh, I don't know.
I know. Fatal Attraction and Porky's 8 weeks,
Right.
and then like Avatar 7 weeks on Golden Pond, #1 at the box office, as many weeks as Avatar, 7 weeks.
Oh, I guess we'll never know how the rest of that list goes. We were accompanied today by violinist Robert Rescott. All right, Mark, let's get into the news. Oops. Let's get into the news.
According to Bloomberg, Nintendo is reportedly looking to increase Switch production in this next fiscal year.
Which I'll say raises some questions, but let's continue through the facts.
Okay, so from the Bloomberg article, quote, Nintendo has told suppliers and assembly partners it intends to churn out more Switch units in the fiscal year starting April, but has not yet communicated a precise target.
So, Switch units. What do we think that means?
Lots of room for interpretation.
Lots of room. The Switch OLED, Switch Lite, Vanilla Switch, something else.
So, and one thing to note is that Nintendo originally forecasted for the current fiscal year that ends in March, 21 million units, but then lowered it in November to 19 million due to component supply issues.
Okay.
So not because of demand, just because of component supply issues.
So they are seemingly now acknowledging that those issues have been surmounted.
And according to Bloomberg, Nintendo believes demand for the Switch is still strong. So, also, we didn't talk about it last week because we didn't know this last week, but we learned that the Switch...
True of most things, by the way. If we don't talk about it on the show, you can assume we don't know about it.
We learned last week that the Switch was the #1 console in the US last year in units sold, according to NPD. So, still going incredibly strong, and yet it just feels like it's been around for a long time.
It does feel like it's been around for a long time. What is it that makes the Switch... What is it that makes them think like, oh yeah, we're going to sell more of these things next year?
I don't know. Like,
is it a plan to drop the price?
Right. Is it a new model like we saw with, like the Lite and the OLED? Is it a strong games lineup, with like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom coming out
Right.
Miyamoto having that Pikmin 4 t-shirt?
Right.
They're
gonna sell so many t-shirts with this thing.
Lingering unmet demand? Like I don't know.
Does it feel like there's unmet demand at this point? It feels like if you want to buy a Switch, you can go into... My coworker the other day was like, my daughter's been asking for a Switch. Can you help me find one? And I was like, I think you can just go into a Best Buy and pick one up.
Yeah, after the holidays, I didn't have to search for the OLED. I just went into any store I just happened to be at, and they had one.
Yeah, exactly. Like he and I went to my computer and just pulled up Best Buy and was like, oh yeah, you can get 12 in stock down the street. And so he just did. It doesn't seem like there is pent up demand for it at this point.
No. So it feels, obviously this seems like I guess in the craziest scenario.
Yeah.
They are they're counting a Switch successor as a Switch. But that is truly bonkers,
yeah.
Zero. And then I guess maybe they're trying to stock up the base model of the Switch before they switch the assembly lines over to a new version. But it really genuinely seems like there is no plans to retire the current Switch, at least in the next fiscal year.
So we've talked a couple times about what Nintendo's in this weird place where it doesn't seem like they want to put out new, more powerful hardware, even though that's the sort of common refrain. And we've asked what is it that makes Nintendo new and exciting, or what can be their offering that is a next gen kind of thing without actually changing the hardware. And I've suggested before that especially this partnership with DNA, that they've got to be doing something on the network side or on the services side. And if they are about to drop a thing where the Nintendo online account system is more robust, or more gotta have access to it, or gotta have access to it on Switch, then I could see there being a need for more of these things in the wild. But it's also just if you want one, you can get one.
Right.
What do you think? What do you think this portends? Do we have a new model of Switch? Do we have a price drop? What's going on?
So I mean, I don't know. You know, the Switch has gone up in price with the OLED, you know, over the
Sure,
years, and
yeah.
so it's like, yeah, maybe a price drop, maybe like $50 off or something. But I really don't know. You know, a few months ago, I said that I thought 2023 was the year that we're going to get like whatever is next in Nintendo hardware, and it seems very clear that that is not
Not
going to be the case. But I feel like their Nintendo, the longer they wait, that the enthusiast press, anyways, and like, you know, like
Yeah, is moving on.
and like gamers are
Right.
becoming more and more like frustrated, or you know, like impatient, I guess is the right word. Like I saw a review of, or like preview or something, of Fire Emblem Engage, and it was like, oh, Engage is the perfect game while you wait for a Switch 2. And it's like, I think you're waiting a long, you know, like it
Yeah,
just seems
yeah,
more and
yeah.
more, but that's kind of like the dialogue right now. And I think it obviously the Switch is selling to a very broad audience, and that's just like a noisy part of the community that, you know, we're more tapped into, and so like we listen to. But it does
Right.
make me feel like the longer Nintendo waits, the greater pressure there is on whatever this next hardware is to be successful.
That's true. That's true. Well, the thing that's so weird is that like, you know, you can look to like these previous examples in Nintendo's like hardware lineup, like I'm specifically thinking here of the Wii, right? That like the Wii sold like crazy. There's no world where you could say that the Wii was a disappointment, but by the end of its life, they were not making that much well-regarded first-party games for it. But that is simply not the case for the Switch. Like the Switch, the Fire Emblem Engage is being well reviewed. People are excited about it. Tears of the Kingdom is coming out.
Highly anticipated by
highly
everybody.
anticipated.
Yeah.
Won a game award for it, I guess. But like every year, there's at least a couple games that like the people in that same like gamer enthusiast journalist soup that they're excited about, right? And even if it's something like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which is you know, suffering technically, maybe because it's on that old hardware, and maybe just because that's what it is, it's still like heralded as a great gaming experience that you can only play on Switch. So like it doesn't actually sound like the we can say that it's getting creaky and that like it's reaching the end of its life, but the sales don't back that up.
Right. Yeah, it's such a I think they're entering a really interesting time, because I do think, you know, like last year in like November or something, The Verge published an article about how like, yeah, like the Switch is feeling really on its last legs. And so I think that if they're not, maybe no fault of their own, but the narrative around the Switch in the gaming press, in like tech press, like just in general, is becoming like, this thing feels old. This thing is on its last legs. Why is there no replacement? And I think you're right that a lot of people won't tune into that, but I can't imagine that that's what Nintendo wants the discussion around Tears of the Kingdom to be. It's like, Tears of the Kingdom is great. Boy, I wish I could play it on like hardware that didn't have these like technical issues. Do you know what I mean? Like
I do. Yeah.
I think they're entering a really interesting phase of the Switch where it is enormously successful, but the like enthusiasts and the press are just kind of getting tired of it, and that may not be reflected in what just normal consumers are feeling. But anybody who is looking for anything Switch related right now, if you're just curious about Fire Emblem Engage, like that is a lot of the narrative that you're being told.
Yeah, which is and will be a lot of the narrative around Tears of the Kingdom. Even if it is great, even if it is somehow better than Breath of the Wild, it's still going to be like, but I wish it was even better on stronger hardware.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible that like you know, one of the like possibilities that you have in the notes here is this like indicative of a strong games lineup for this year? Do you think it's possible for Nintendo to do a like launch year style release, like a launch year schedule basically on not new hardware,
like a 2017
like
type,
to try
level
to
where it's just
repeat
like,
2017, where it's like, here are the like level and quantity of games that we would try to push out to launch a new system, but just in the middle of the Switch's life.
yeah, I think what's so weird about that is you're like, well, they have to have something for whatever this next thing is. And
Sure.
so if they are launching, like all these games that, heavy hitters that have been worked on internally by, like the Mario team and all that kind of stuff, you're like, well, then how far away is the next hardware, because all these teams would then be starting
Yeah.
over essentially. So I don't know. I have in there that,
But also, a lot of those teams have been quiet for a while.
right.
So, like, they have to have something just about ready to go. And I mean, my joke answer for a while was no new Switch until 2025. And now I'm just like, that's early.
Yeah, like holiday 2024 seems like early at this point.
Right.
Yeah, I really have no idea. It seems based on just kind of like purely maybe informed speculation from people online is that, Nintendo doesn't necessarily have like a ton of heavy hitters for 2023, and that they are working on, like remasters, Metroid Prime, maybe like an F-Zero game, like that sort of thing. And I really don't know. It feels a little baffling to me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and this is all, the joy of being a Nintendo fan is that you will be very excited about them sometimes, and then a period of years where you're like, hey, what's going on here? How are you feeling? Obviously, I mentioned that Crisis Core performed, obviously just a little bit worse on the Switch than I was seeing it perform on PlayStation 5. But how are you feeling about like the age of your Switch? How do you feel about like this conversation in general?
Yeah, I'm so insulated because I don't own a PlayStation 5. My
Yeah.
PlayStation 4 hasn't been hooked up because when I have time to game, it is just on, like, I basically just play on Nintendo hardware. So the Switch, for all intents and purposes, is the only gaming hardware that I have. And so from like a graphics sort of like standpoint, I don't have any complaints. What I really feel is just like, man, like, I just wish the eShop was a lot faster. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it feels like when you're loading like lists of games, like it's really loading, and that kind of stuff is for me where the Switch really shows its age.
Yeah. For me too. I do think the like just general conversation around like what the other consoles are capable of versus what the Switch is capable of. I honestly don't see that much of a change. Like outside of the like mega powerhouse things, like God of War Ragnarok that I just played on PlayStation 5. Outside of those extreme examples, I think you still see games on the other platforms that are like, if not chugging in the same way that they're chugging on the Switch, that like runs up against like the same sort of like graphical limits, right? That like without something being a huge like quadruple A style game that they spend a ton of money on, and they're just like, this has to sell 8 million copies or we're all dead. That like I just don't know that there's that much of a gulf between what's like responsibly put out on Switch versus what's responsibly put out on PlayStation.
I feel like the most likely scenario is that maybe a combination of like price drop, but actually a price drop, now that I say that, like,
Why?
actually doesn't
Why would
even
they do
feel
that? Why
right.
would they drop the price?
Like, doesn't feel that realistic to me. But maybe a new version. We've talked about like every 2 years they tend to have some sort of revision.
Mhm.
So maybe like a OLED light,
Yeah, why not an OLED light? Like that makes perfect sense to me.
So yeah, I guess we'll
We'll
It'll
find
be very
out.
interesting to see
Right.
what Nintendo has up its sleeve for 2023, or
Well,
doesn't.
Or doesn't. And we are Mark, I'm declaring it now. We are in Nintendo Direct watch. We are at the end of January. Any given Tuesday, Nintendo will announce there's a Direct coming out the next day. We're in that window now for the next 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We are all on notice. And that, I mean, I'm not super plugged into like Twitter right now. But I feel like there are usually like rumors that precipitate these things, and I've not been like
Yeah,
privy
there's
to
no
any of that.
buzz.
There's no buzz.
Yeah.
Um, this is like my least favorite kind of Toy Story. No buzz.
I'll allow it. I will allow it. A manga adaptation of Fire Emblem Engage has been announced for Japan. The main character is the male version of Aleer, because you know how in the game you can choose
right.
either form. For the manga, it's just going to be the main characters. You see how before I said manga, now I said manga. I'm just covering all my bases.
Yeah, just say them both.
Published. It's going to be published monthly in Psycho Jump, starting with for the February 3rd issue. And Kuzuro Kayu, who is known for series like Dead End Host, Heimdall, and Hugago Idol, is the author.
That's neat. It's neat that they are supporting this in the form of a manga. Do you think that there is just like generally speaking in the Fire Emblem games, a sort of like consensus on like which version of the main character is like the main version, like which one is like headcanon for Nintendo?
No, I don't really. I feel like the female versions are very popular.
I feel like they generally are too. Which are you playing as?
I'm playing as the male version.
Right. I plan on playing as the male version too. The female version, her breasts are too big, and I feel weird selecting that character. But yeah, like I think like the female Byleth and female Corrin are from Three Houses, and Fates are sort of like the default that like is the assumption for those characters.
Yeah. Not much revealed about the plot of the manga, but presumably will follow the game story.
Maybe it'll be an alternate timeline. That's one of the I did play a little bit of Fire Emblem Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes this weekend. I didn't bring it up because I was just hacking and slashing. But it's so funny to me that they're like, all right, we're gonna tell another story in this world, but it's gonna be an alternate timeline. So maybe that's what they're gonna do here.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
Last week, Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden were released on Switch and other platforms. The Persona Central website translated an interview with Persona team business producer Atsushi Nomura and Persona team director Daisuke Yajima, originally published in Japanese gaming magazine Famitsu. They're kind of like just reading pieces of this. It reminded me how complex it is to bring games from one platform to another.
Yes.
You know, in my mind, it's a PSP game that is being brought to modern consoles, so that must be super easy. But it's actually incredibly complex. Right, yeah, exactly. But it's incredibly complex. So, two parts that stood out to me. So Famitsu asked, wasn't there more than simple porting involved with these two titles, whose original versions were released on handhelds? And Yajima says, that's right. There was a lot of high-resolution original data available for illustrations and other 2D materials, but for 3D data such as CG models, we had to modify textures and optimize the data to match the modern console specifications. Particularly, Persona 3 Portable's resolution is much higher than that of the original version, so it took an enormous amount of time to modify all the data.
Yeah, and that all stands to reason. Like one of the things about like porting games from earlier generations, especially like within Nintendo, is that you're like, oh yeah, you know, they would have to like up-res that from Wii that was in HD, you know, to so like bringing about Skyward Sword HD, for example. Like that's a big that's a big task, but it's not insurmountable. The idea of taking something that was on the 3DS, which looks great on a tiny screen, the resolution is so low, the textures are so undetailed that are just going to look insane on an HD TV. It just means there's more to do there, right? Like the gulf between a portable thing and what you play on your TV is huge.
And Famitsu also asked, supporting 60 frames is a big change, isn't it? And Yajima said, indeed, the original version was based on 30 frames per second, but it wasn't a simple matter of doubling the frame rate to reach 60 frames per second. For example, in the event scenes, the motion and the scaling often didn't match. To be honest, we considered compromising on the event scenes, where the focus is on watching dialogue, since the feel wouldn't change much if we kept the original 30 frames per second.
Oh.
Still, I was determined to not cut any corners in the remastered version.
That's a great point. Like, if most of what's happening in that is you're reading the text of these characters speaking to each other, why bother?
Yeah, but it is interesting, right? Because like I also know that if that was the case, then in reviews for it, they would have been like, and it's jarring that the cutscenes are
That's
in 30
true,
frames
that's
per
true.
second. You know what I mean? So
It's so weird that is jarring, though. Just like thinking about the human eye's ability to perceive motion. And I know that like at a higher frame rate, like 60, like there actually is something that you're perceiving that's different, even if you're not like able to perceive the frames between all of that. But like, that a cartoon or whatever is usually drawn on the twos, which means that in the 24 frames per second that a normal movie is, you're only drawing it 12 images per second, and that looks great.
yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe it's like, I mean, for me personally, I don't know that I could see something and be like, oh, that's 60 frames, that's 30 frames. But if you put it side by side,
Yeah,
like
that's
I'd
right.
be able to tell. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting because, again, in my own head, I think of these as like such simple, like no-brainer projects.
Right.
But you realize the complexities behind actually porting something like that.
Yep, it's all a big deal, and game development is impossible.
Game Freak's seminal solitaire/horse racing 3DS masterpiece piece, Pocket Card Jockey, was recently released on Apple Arcade as Pocket Card Jockey Ride On. And to coincide with the release, Polygon published an article on the origins of the game, which I had never really considered before.
Yeah, the game had to come from somewhere.
So Masao Taya, a programmer at Game Freak, was a horse racing fan and had made several internal proposals for a horse racing game mashed up with a card game, but he says they weren't very good.
I bet they were all like complicated, where it's like you get this many like horse points, and like you get to like play shoes, and you got to play a saddle, and all this kind of stuff. It's so funny to me how the game is just solitaire. Like that's the gameplay. That's the main way you interact with it, is just hands of solitaire.
So, Pokemon series composer and also a horse racing fan, Go Ichino's, knew that he was trying to work on, and sent him a mobile solitaire game and suggested he try solitaire instead of a custom card game.
Smart. Everyone knows how to play solitaire.
Yeah, and so they like worked through it, figured it out. But what I didn't realize, the game has been on phones before.
What?
There was a free-to-play version released in Japan that like didn't do very well.
Oh.
And so
so you probably had to like pay for
right,
like,
exactly.
okay.
And so yeah, like in the Polygon article, Taya talks about how it just didn't work. And then as Apple Arcade got more popular in Japan, they felt like there was an opportunity to release like a fully fledged version.
Do you think, before we move on to this next point, do you think that solitaire, like playing hands of solitaire, is because of its like ubiquity on like PCs back in the day, like one of the fundamental like gameplay types like of game, that it's like solitaire is up there with like falling block puzzle and brick breaker?
Oh yeah.
And,
Totally.
like pinball.
I've never thought about it that way, but yes, absolutely.
Like it's just got to be.
But of course, Polygon is asking the question on everybody's mind: is there a possibility of a future Switch version?
Oh my God, please.
And the author asks about it, but Taya says they're focused on improving the Apple Arcade version, but he doesn't rule it out completely.
Well, I hope that we get it someday. This was almost enough to make me subscribe to Apple Arcade, but I didn't do it.
The SteamWorld series is expanding with an announcement of SteamWorld Build coming to PC and consoles, including Switch, in 2023. SteamWorld Build. I think I said, I feel like I said build strangely the first time. SteamWorld Build.
Mark, that was such a strange way to say that.
Yeah. In their article covering the announcement, Eurogamer calls it, I was looking for an easy way to understand what this was, and Eurogamer calls it a mix of SimCity with Dungeon Keeper.
What's Dungeon Keeper?
So you construct and build, in this game, you construct and build a city above the surface, but then you're also sending workers into the mines below to explore and gather resources that you need to keep the city moving and keep the city growing.
And those people that you're sending out, is that you? Are you controlling them in like a digging around, or is it just?
Honest, I have no idea.
Mark doesn't know.
But there's a demo available now on Steam, so
so someone might know.
Someone can check it out. I played SteamWorld Dig 2,
Yes.
and I didn't beat it, but I enjoyed what I played of it. I got pretty far. And it sounds like it could be an intriguing mix to have like a city builder on top and then doing the SteamWorld Dig stuff underneath.
Yeah, I mean the least that you can expect with a SteamWorld game is that it's going to be well constructed and look cool, right? Like those guys know how to apply those designs and just like their attention to detail to a bunch of different genres, and it seems like they're all relatively successful at it. So, one to keep an eye on for sure.
And finally, Uno is the next Nintendo Switch Online game trial for Nintendo Switch Online subscribers in North America. The trial starts January 24th at 10 a.m. Pacific time and runs through the 29th at midnight, basically. The full version is also on sale for 60% off through February 6th.
So I mean, it's cool that they're keeping this up. How much does Uno normally cost on Switch?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm looking it up right now. $9.99. So it's not like a big expense, and also like it's Uno. You know what you know what it is. You don't need like a week to try it, right?
Right.
And also like after a week of Uno on your Switch, you'll be like, I'm good. I'm good on Uno. When's the last time you played Uno?
I actually played over Thanksgiving with some family.
So I suggested that we play, or that Uno was a possibility when Sarah's brother's family was in town for Christmas, and Ben shut it down real fast. Sarah's brother, because he was like, "No, the girls don't like Uno, or they like Uno, but they're not good at it. Like they get too fighty about it, I think." So I suggested Uno and was told, "No, we do not play Uno in this house
Uno,
anymore."
a cause of contention.
All right, Mark, let's get out of the news. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, you can still follow us on Twitter, still, because it's still there and we're still sort of engaging with it. I'm at Patrick_Ellers, Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at Nin Cart Society. We also have a Discord, which you should be a part of because that is a place where we are talking and where people are hanging out talking about Nintendo. Email us or tweet at us and we will send you an invitation and you can hang out as well. Anthony DeLuca made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8BitBetty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying thank you for listening.